Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to our Legislative Priorities Workshop. And with no further ado, I'll call Mr. Hardy Smith, who will be making our presentation today.
Mayor, thank you very much. Mayor, members of the Commission, Hardy Smith, Government Relations Administrator for the City of Daytona Beach. The purpose of our workshop this afternoon is to get Commission feedback and consensus on potential legislative issues for 2012 at both the state and federal levels. And your input, of course, is requested on both levels. And we have a list of requested or suggested priorities for action at the end of the presentation. The 2012 state legislative environment is likely to be very challenging at best due to economic pressures, continuing governmental reorganization at the state level. Redistricting and election year politics are going to keep Tallahassee in pretty much a constant state of turmoil. And when the legislature is in session at any time, you've got to be on both offense and defense, and you've got to be prepared to play on both sides of the program. The approach from a City of Daytona Beach standpoint to being taken to look out for the best interest of our residents and our businesses and the city itself involve maintaining awareness by monitoring legislative action that could negatively affect our city or possibly create opportunities they would like to take advantage of. The city is like any other entity, and we have to be prepared because we can never be sure who's going to be attempting some kind of legislation, some kind of program, and moving that forward that's not in our best interest. To make sure we're on top of the game, we utilize a number of resources. We do have a lobbyist on retainer. We do work closely with the Florida League of Cities. We work closely with professional associations that members of our city staff are involved in, and you're probably a member of various associations yourself in your own private world that you're in outside city government. We do communicate with the Volusia County Legislative Delegation. We work closely with the Chamber of Commerce, the Volusia League of Cities, VCARD, VCOG, and so we're getting information from and input from a lot of sources. A listing of the activities that are suggested as our city's focus for the upcoming session start with what's not on the list. And what's not on the list are what all cities across the state had become accustomed to for a long period of time, and those are community project funding requests. Those don't exist anymore, haven't existed for the past several years, and that policy of the legislative leadership will continue again this year. So taking a look at the items that are on the list, along with the Volusia League of Cities, we would recommend supporting the tightening of loopholes and restrictions on pain clinics and internet cafes. That seems to be a hot button issue. I know we've talked about that also with the League of Cities and VCOG sessions. We would recommend supporting legislative action that would clarify rules for the use of community redevelopment dollars in redevelopment areas for maintenance and repair work. And to be more specific about that, I know everyone's aware there's a difference of opinion as an understatement with the City of Daytona Beach, our CRA, and the State Auditor General a couple of years ago. And the difference of opinion is that it revolves around we go out, invest in a redevelopment area, have a redevelopment area funded project, but we can't go back, according to the Auditor General, and use redevelopment dollars to repair or maintain the project that was built with redevelopment dollars. So that's a real puzzling situation, and we'd like to try to clarify that, and hopefully with some legislative language, we could help do that.
I have a question on that, though.
Certainly.
I thought it was my understanding, though, that if we were doing an upgrade or upsizing, that was an allowable expense. Oh, sorry. Okay, microphone. Sorry. That was an allowable expense. You couldn't just repair, but if you were improving, that was allowable. Is that not correct?
No, you can expand the capital component of the infrastructure, with CRA funds, but it's their opinion that you can't maintain it after you expand it. That's
Okay.
the Auditor General.
Okay, so it's limiting.
General
Yeah.
fund
It's a-
item.
Okay.
You can expand, you can lengthen a sidewalk, for instance. If
Yeah.
you run a sidewalk out and then you need it to
Make it
extend,
longer.
you can do that. You can't repair a broken sidewalk. that
That's
people
existing.
would fall over and kill
Yeah.
themselves. Unless you wanted to make it decorative.
Oh, and then
Yeah.
you can do it then.
Yeah.
But then you can't use CRA to keep it clean. Is that, does it then run into that again?
Maintenance is-
They say you can't. We disagree with them, and there's nothing
Okay.
legislation there's nothing legislatively that says you can't. It's just their opinion.
Okay.
And what we want to do is clarify, so it's not an opinion. The legislature needs to say, yes, you can do that,
Or no,
or
you
those
can't.
kind of things.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
Another one of the issues that we're seeing now, and we would look for hopefully some legislative assistance with, is appearance standards, the discussion of code enforcement, code compliance issues becomes elevated and much more significant in our community. One of the things that we're finding is extremely frustrating, and it's hard to understand, and it's hard to explain, are the time lags on responding. And what we're finding out is me personally, as I get more involved in these types of issues, is we go out and we're following the process that is mandated by state statute, is a short nutshell way to approach it. So we're trying to not deny anyone's due process, but if we can accelerate it, I think everyone would certainly appreciate that. So that's what we would like to be able to do if there is an opportunity to do that. Another item on our list is, of course, seeking state agency approval of our beachfront lighting plan. We've submitted worked with the County of Volusia on this, the Department of Environmental Protection. That's all been crafted, submitted to the state, and now would like to be able to utilize our resources that we have to be able to help push that forward in the manner that and produce the result that we would like to see when that final result comes out. A traditional item that's on any municipality's list, of course, is opposition to any unfunded mandates. That, of course, is getting to be much more prevalent in Tallahassee. Funding shortages continue, the squeeze is on, and there seems to be, of course, the trend of pushing down programs to the local level without the funding to go with it. And then the final item on the state list is opposing, we would suggest opposing reduction of home rule authority. And the specific example that I would offer is opposition to any restrictions that impair your ability to make financial decisions for your city. And that's been a priority of the legislature to do exactly that over the last several sessions. And we just don't know what's going to pop up in that regard this year. As the session goes along, we would, of course, keep the commission informed of issues so you can see the progress that we're making on the priorities that you identify. Also, we want to keep you informed because a legislative session starts moving and it's popping and it's real time, it's very accelerated. And we know if you're informed of the issues and have the background, if we need some quick feedback, you'll have the benefit of knowing what's going on. And it's highly likely that there would be some issue, and who knows what it might be, that could pop up when there needs to be a commission discussion for giving guidance on what staff should do to follow up with that. There are some key dates that are very important in the legislative process. We would like to come back at the next City Commission meeting, October the 5th, with the list that you developed tonight for formal approval. And then we would come back, then we would appear at the October 12th Volusia Delegation Annual Meeting. And then the official protocol of the process, the legislative delegation meets, if you're not familiar with that. They have one annual meeting, and then that's when you go to them, present their list, and then you're marked off as appearing before the delegation. They've heard your concerns. They have your list, so further down the road in the legislative process, anything that comes up, they go back to see if you came and if you participated and offered your request. The legislative session this year starts early, and it starts on January the 10th and should go for approximately 2 months, 60 days, but you never know. You just don't know. There's an official clock, and then there's an unofficial clock that can keep running. On the federal side of the legislature, at the federal side of the congressional level, you have a list of priorities for activities that we'd like your feedback on this afternoon also. At the federal level, we would propose to continue to seek funding for major capital infrastructure improvement needs. Of course, Orange Avenue is the identified #1 infrastructure project. And I'll tell you that the city of Daytona Beach has been extremely diligent in identifying and going after any and every opportunity possible for funding on Orange Avenue. Our staff team has been working, and we're about 2 weeks away from another major submittal. It would be a $20 million request as a part of the U.S. Department of Transportation's Tiger 3 program. And Tiger, for those of you that would like to know what Tiger stands for, it's Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery Grant Program, Tiger 3. We submitted in Tiger 1, we didn't make it. No project in Florida was approved. We submitted in Tiger 2. Tiger 2 had a very limited pool of funds. We didn't make it, and I don't think maybe 1 or 2 projects in Florida maybe have made Tiger 2. But we have been told by the official reviewers of the Tiger grant program from the Department of Transportation that Orange Avenue is a very compelling project. And it's just a matter of competing. And it is a competition, and we just continue to take our shots.
Artie,
yes, sir.
To that end, we sent a letter to the county
Yeah, I was
Yes,
going
sir.
to ask
recently asking for the funds that they set aside
Yes, sir.
to be used for the planning and design of what's going to come about over there. And that's I guess totally the city and the county together have something like $600,000 in the planning and design. The reason I bring this up is there is a lot of chatter coming out of Washington about a new program, and I don't want to use stimulus program because they don't want to use it. So, but anyway, it's another program directed at infrastructure. And I own all of our programs. I think it's going to behoove us to understand that program, to do our due diligence, which is planning, designing, and everything else that puts us in a position to qualify to be shovel-ready or whatever catchphrase they're using in their programs. So whoever is going to be in charge of getting all of the input on these programs hasn't been enacted yet, but there's talk of billions of dollars being set aside for bridges, roads, those types of things. And we have a real we have a real opportunity on Orange Avenue because of the bridge. It's a federal bridge. We've got Orange Avenue is an evacuation route. It was one of the areas that was the hardest hit during our floods in May a few years ago. And so we have a real case there if we're right on top of it. But if we're not, someone else is going to get consideration that we don't. So I'm really interested that how these programs evolve out of Washington, that we're right on top of them and doing everything that we can do. And the county, I talked with Frank last night. He understands the need. It has to go before their council as well, but we could certainly, benefit from having the planning and design work finished on Orange Avenue.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And for the benefit of the commission, the Tiger 3 program is one program. Hopefully we'll be successful with that. But should we not be successful, and what we're pushing for is to have anything related to the planning, design, and engineering work, anything related to preliminary type activity related to Orange Avenue, completely done and ready. So if we don't make it for Tiger 3, we're ready for whatever comes next. And whatever comes next will require exactly the same amount of information. So we again, and this is information that you can submit, but the criteria specifically says unless you have this work done, you will not be considered competitive, and you're out in the first round. So
we were talking
Yes.
yesterday. Did we get the score sheets back from 1 and 2 that we didn't get funded, or is that something we're going to do to see where we needed to fix our grant? to be
thank
more
you. We got back our lobbyist in Washington.
Okay.
Helped secure a scoring opportunity for us and review of our Tiger 2 submission. And if you look at it from a sports terminology and tournament, we were just a few points shy of the finals. And that's all you can do is you have a chance to win. And we were very, very close. Very close.
But did they have comments or anything?
Yes, and we had the
Okay.
benefits of we
The
had
comments,
a full
okay.
yes, we had a full conference call, had all the comments,
Comments,
excuse me,
okay.
how we can improve, what
Okay.
we need to do to adjust. Here's what the winners got, here's what they did differently than you. We had the benefit of a full breakdown, and we're taking
actually-
full advantage of it.
We've actually put in some elements, some transportation elements that were not in there previously.
Yes.
Because that was one of the things that
they said
that
should be.
scored higher.
Yes.
Okay.
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 Also, with the other projects on the federal list, we continue to submit and would, of course, recommend seeking any opportunities that come our way for drainage and flood control type infrastructure projects. The key to understand on these, again, we keep taking the shots. We have a very good working relationship with our federal congressional delegation. Congressman Micah is just a real asset for Daytona Beach. He calls frequently. He's here. He's in these areas. He knows the problems we're trying to address, and he calls and makes sure. Hardy, has Daytona Beach submitted? Have you submitted? Here's the next opportunity. But the keys are, of course, there are three keys: the annual budgeting process, and there is just the reality is no one knows what's going to happen with just the political uncertainty in Washington these days, even with the annual budget. The other two important keys are the federal water reauthorization bill. Billions and billions and billions of infrastructure projects are included, and we have all of our funding and requests for flooding, mitigation, stormwater needs we've got about $200 million worth of projects that have been identified in the master plan that are in the water reauthorization bill when it moves. And I say when. It's not a question of if. It's just a question of when. It will move, just no one knows when that will be. But you just have to be ready, and I think everyone's confident we are. The federal highway reauthorization bill. You've heard Commissioner Gilliland talk about that and reporting status reports from the Volusia TPO. Again, that's where the money is, billions and billions of dollars for highway, road, and bridge projects, and that's the authorizing legislation that hasn't been. Those are normally 5, 6, 7, 8-year type bills, the windows that they cover, and it's overdue for being passed at some point. Not a question of if, just a question of when. And again, working with Congressman Micah and the rest of our congressional delegation, we've got our request in there. And we keep freshening those up just whenever we're given that opportunity. Other items quickly, and one thing, if you're not aware of it, at the federal level, just like the state level, at the federal level, the policy is, and it's by party. So the Republican Party has adopted a party policy of not accepting earmark requests. So in the past, when we could submit a request and we would take advantage of that, and now that doesn't exist. The rest of your list, you'll see we can plan to seek funding for development of enhancement of recreational and cultural facilities, programs, operations. We would like to be able to seek funding for the International Speedway Boulevard Economic Development Project. Some of you may be familiar with the ISB Coalition. That's essentially where the corridor has been identified as a major regional economic generator. When you have the hospital, the colleges, universities, county schools, regional malls, the airport, the speedway. I'm not sure if I'm leaving somebody out, but all of those economic generators are there. And what do they need to continue to prosper and help our local economy? What do they need from an infrastructure standpoint to continue to grow? And there's been a community effort that's been going on for about 3 years or so that's been working to identify those needs, and would like to help be able to follow up on those. Other projects would be to seek any type of funding that might be available for the development of the E-zone and anything involved on the beachfront, such as infrastructure needs, water, sewer, parking facilities, those types of things. Public safety needs related to funding for items such as personnel, equipment, and technology are always important to Daytona Beach. And seeking funding for improvements to the city's utility infrastructure citywide are also very important. That's a snapshot look at our recommendations for the 2012 state and federal activity, and any other questions that you might have would certainly be welcome, Mayor.
Hardy, I asked you earlier today, what's the future of the Safer grants and the COPS grants? Are they due to sunset? Are they going to continue? Have you heard any?
Mayor, all that we're able to get at this point in time is like everything else, and the funding is just uncertain beyond the existing programs.
And then I'll be quiet, but grants are a big piece of all of a lot of this stuff, and we really have to be on top of our game when it comes to grant programs and what's
Yes,
available out there and identifying them. So any grants that are available to support any of our projects or anything that's on this sheet and what will be added, if we're going to identify these as our priorities, then our legislative priorities, then we need to be all over top of these identified items as far as any grant opportunities associated with them.
Absolutely.
Okay, questions, comments, additions? I think we did have an addition request from Mr. Cameron there, so somebody want to.
Yeah, and I have some too, but I don't know if y'all want to look at what Jimmy handed us first, and then we get into ours. Or it doesn't matter.
Sure.
Yeah, we all got it right, Jimmy.
Everybody should.
Yeah, everybody has a copy of it.
Okay.
All right, let's go with ours. Complete our sheet, and then we'll have
Okay.
talk about the online tax collection.
Well, and one of the things, want to make sure that if this is something that we probably should do annually, right, Jim? I mean, is this something we need to make sure we do every year? Okay. And then, like you said, go and present, I guess, with the delegation, that we make sure we support whatever we come up with at the state and federal. But one of the things I talked to y'all about yesterday, I'm sorry, I clipped in the paper right after the meeting, Embry-Riddle unveils initiatives, and it made me think of something that I wanted us to look at, that we support, all of our institutions of higher learning. And one of the things that Dr. Johnson had talked about in the article, that in the Embry-Riddle Technology Park and some of their programs, to get some funding from local, state, and federal levels. So I don't know what might be available, but I certainly think, especially as we're talking about the ISB corridor, that we make sure that, in my opinion, we need to add something about supporting what our institutions of higher learning are doing, and also whatever Embry-Riddle Technology Park, and move that forward, because that's not only education but also jobs and job creation in the area. So that was one of the things I wanted us to look at adding.
Whatever happened with, we talked a lot about opening the FEC back to passenger rail, and was that something that state money was going to have to be used for through Amtrak?
Federal funding with a pass-through through the state. And there hasn't been, I guess the last update I got was probably just a couple of months ago. That seems to be dormant. Again, that specifically, that would all be tied up in the federal highway reauthorization bill. So they're hoping, that whole effort was to try to be on that list and to be included, and it's just, everything is just stalled.
So having a stop would be a priority for me to.
Yes, and the city has, we've done support and resolutions and shown up and all of that. I'll get a status report for you on that, though.
Hardy, I think it'd also be to our advantage to continue to reinforce the fact that we continue to support that project, even as they go forward and consider funding issues. This was an initiative, kind of a unique initiative. It was a public-private initiative that also, in the end, would have had us participating with them if it ever got to the point of being approved. So it does bring jobs. It brings other opportunities to us, and if there's no objections, I'd like to include that on our list so that we can make them aware of our support.
And the other thing I had was, there was something on the original list that we had with RAMBA about signage on I-4, was it?
Down by the air, probably. It was on, just wait a minute, it was on the second page. Hold on.
Yeah.
Coming from
Orlando Highway 528.
Okay.
Yes, coming from when you travel up and down north and south on I-95, there's a lot from Jacksonville all the way from South Florida. There's a lot of signage saying Daytona Beach this way. But when you come out of the airport in Orlando, you can find your way to just about any place but Daytona Beach, and on the Beeline and all of that. So we said, well, if we can try to get Daytona Beach added, it's just a simple add Daytona Beach. Let's see if we can advocate that.
With my obsession with wayfinding signage, I would like to have that, maybe, I don't see it included on this list. And the other signage issue that may be appropriate to talk about on a federal or state level is the Brown Historic District signs that are all up and down 95. Daytona Beach doesn't have one, and that frequently gets brought up to my attention, and this might be the appropriate place to make note of it.
Okay.
Speaking of signs, nothing to do with historic, unfortunately, but there's a huge pain clinic sign right south of Mason Avenue on US 1. I guess it's legal, but it's a terrible looking. That's a terrible looking sign. It's a billboard, and given the emphasis, a lot of us was at the meeting when we heard just exactly what you're talking about, that the state is really looking for ways to close the loopholes that make us the highway to Pill Heaven down here, and but part of closing up these pain clinics and those types of things are absolutely in their bullseye. But can we check on that sign in the
Yes, sir.
off chance that there's something wrong with it, the way it looks? Or
Yes, sir.
Because it's terrible looking.
Will do.
I have a couple of comments. When we were looking at the original ROMBA priorities, the point I was trying to make in looking at those priorities was that I did not believe we had discussed them as a commission, not the fact that perhaps we were going to exclude them. As you've seen, Commissioner White's brought forward an issue that was on that one, and I know my point about it was the fact that I thought we should discuss what they were. For example, there was an article in today's paper from mentioning Senator Redevlopment and the position he's taking on gambling in the state of Florida. When it was mentioned to me in my meeting yesterday that we cannot stick our head in the sand, my response was, why don't we have that discussion as a commission regarding whether or not we want to have a lobbyist represent us in that manner? So I would be willing to entertain a discussion on that to see if that's something that we are interested in, considering what's been in the paper today. Did you have a comment on that? And then I have some other comments.
Yeah, I would like to, if I can.
Yes, sir.
Just kind of facilitate that effort. We have a gaming industry in our community already, the dog track, and they have a card license. They also have, there's also an additional license they have that they have not used. So at some point, they're going to go back to get approval to use that license at some place, whether it's in our city or in this county or in the area. In addition, there's going to be, we've been told there are discussions going to take place this next session about casino gaming throughout the state and how that develops, and I think it'd be wise for us to at least have some knowledge as to what they're doing and how they're doing it and who's involved. Quite honestly, I don't think Daytona Beach would fit the mold for that type of activity. The sheer numbers are not here, the population that would support it, nor do I think the systems, the transportation systems, and the amenities that usually go with those things are not readily available in Daytona Beach. So not that it would come here, but I think we ought to at least know what's going on.
Well, I saw Dennis at an event not too long ago, and he was talking about how it would be to their deterrent if it actually came. I mean, it would be direct competition for an existing industry that's already here, and the destination resort per se is what he and I were discussing. So, I mean, that was just a conversation that we had, but you already have an industry here that's contributing, that is doing that, and I can't see that he would want us out there openly, trying to have something that's going to come in and compete directly with something that's already here. I mean, if you're talking about monitoring versus saying we want more here, I mean, to me, they're two very different kinds of things.
I think that's all we were talking about, is monitoring what's going on in the industry.
I think because that's where I come from, that the lobbying was what, when you think of lobbying versus monitoring, I think it's very important that we are aware of what is going on in the legislature that will affect us as a community, or that could affect us as a community. But I think it's the point I wanted to make with the RAMBA was that we needed to discuss all of those as a commission. And if the commission chooses that option, that's the commission's decision, whether it's not my personal decision or not my personal decision. It has to do with what the community of the commission would like to see. So that was the point that I had on that. I wanted us to have this open discussion on that. And then back to the grants that we keep talking about. We, as a commission, did hire Brooks & Dunn Grant Consulting. Their term with us, at least the way I read it, is about to expire. And I don't know if we're going to, so I requested their monthly reports, because they are to send us a summary of activities of what they've been doing, because I wanted to go through. There's a lot in here on the Tiger grants, there's a lot on Orange Avenue, on Homeland Security, on discretionary grants, all multimodal aspects. So there are a lot of things covered in here that were very interesting. What I did not see in reading through, and this is a little off topic, but I did not see anything regarding the pier or the E-zone. And one of our priorities, there could be, I have just scanned through it, I got it yesterday afternoon, but that was one of the things that was one of the top priorities in the list that we gave them, had to do with specifically that E-zone area. But obviously, they've been doing a lot of work, or at least a lot of consulting, but it would be interesting to see what comes out of this and how much we get from this. But I did want to, I was quite pleased. There's things on here about the cops and the firefighters, historic preservation grants. So there is a lot of information on here and a lot going on. But I would really like, if we continue this aspect with the Brooks and Dunn, I would really like us to get the monthly reports as they come in from them, to come to each commissioner so that we can review them, and then perhaps back at the beginning say, you know, we'd really rather spend more time looking at these sort of grants.
And, Commissioner, I agree with you 100%. Plus, it'll give us an opportunity to measure their effectiveness.
Absolutely.
It's one thing to fill out a sheet of paper.
Have a
about
lot of
what you're,
meetings.
doing, but how effective are you is the bigger question.
And that's what we need, effectiveness.
Well, I thought that was one of the things that we were going to look at is you can apply for grants all over the place, but it's a percent you actually get funding for. So are we going to get that at the end of the year, what they actually did get funded? I think we need to know that before we renew the contract. Okay.
Very good. Any other comments, Edith?
No, thank you.
Okay. Rob?
Let's see, a simple one. I'd like to add the unfunded mandate part to the federal list as well. We've got probably $500,000 to $1 million worth of unfunded federal mandates coming out of transportation in 3 areas. 1 are replacing the stoplight bulbs with LED lights. 2 is they have this new crazy thing about measuring the reflectivity of, it took me a while to say that word right.
Yes, you practiced, didn't you, Rob?
It did. I was in the car on the way
Going
here.
reflectivity. Okay, good.
But there's a standard. So you have to have a certain amount of reflective capability at night, and if the signs don't meet it, you have to replace them all. The third are replacing all of your crosswalk signal, signage, or the clocks with audible functionality as well. In the past, we have reached out to the TPO for funding on those things. The executive director there has taken a very hard line where he's trying to prevent that. Now the board members, I think, are thinking, believe differently than the executive director. But Carl's trying to prevent us from being able to even ask for funding related to those. We have a request in now for a couple $100,000 for the LED lighting requirement. That audible crosswalk piece, by the way, hasn't been finalized yet. Still, that rule will get published here probably the next couple of months. But like I said, just adding that to the unfunded piece to the federal part, I think would make sense. And there was a lot of discussion last year, and I mentioned it when we had this at our commission meeting, that legislation that would allow more flexibility in the use of 175, 185 money. I know Representative Costello, that was one of his big things last year. Fred actually, I think, tried to bite a little too much off as a freshman, so it didn't go anywhere. But we've got some issues, with the COLA, for example. It was my understanding that we were going to continue to put the 175, 185 money into the pension fund to cover the cost of the COLA. And it turned out that come year 2, we weren't allowed to do that because it was maintaining an existing benefit as opposed to a new or enhanced benefit. So does anybody object to that being added to the state list?
No, and he said he's going to reintroduce what he introduced last year. I ran into him. He said that.
So, but I think that one's worth putting on the list. Just a couple of comments. Hardy, you might want to check House Bill 7095 that passed last session about controlled substances, because there's lots of sort of pill mill kind of language in there. A lot of things I'm dealing with at work, but I did not notice anything in there about advertising. There are certainly a lot of restrictions about signage on the actual clinics, but there could be something buried in there about advertising as well that could address the mayor's concern about that billboard. Absolutely the back to the federal side, the funding for the Emerald Research Park, and I think it was $100 and some odd million that Amtrak needed for railway improvements for the FEC to get that project moving forward. But supporting those, having projects. We talked about Orange Avenue shovel ready is very important. That's the reason we got Dunn Avenue built. We got $5.5 million federal money towards that because it was the only shovel ready project in the county. There was a transportation related project. And one other thing to kind of keep in mind, a lot of the funds that were robbed to pay for earmarks won't be robbed now because of this prohibition on earmarks, assuming that it stays that way. I had some conversation with Jim and with Ron about a particular transportation program that we could apply to, and I've forgotten the acronym for the name of this thing, but it had a safety component. So this redesignation of Orange Avenue as an evacuation route all of a sudden makes that project eligible for that type of funding. But some of these things that have not had money in them in the past, if they stand by their no earmarks, some of those funding opportunities may exist this coming year. So let's just not lose sight of the fact that just because there was no dollars in there for the last 10 years doesn't mean there will be $0 this coming year.
Right.
And that's it. Thank you.
I guess I'm going to look at in a different direction. I didn't hear anybody say anything about housing. And on the state and federal level, anything that's available for affordable housing, and I'm thinking more along the lines too, if we can look at some grants. We on this doing a lot of this code work, but people may need help with getting the houses fixed up. So I think we need some lobbying going down that direction. Affordable housing, mortgage help, helping repair existing structures, something along those lines.
Okay.
That was sort of one of the things that was on my list, but I was thinking specifically about CDBG type grants, to put more into those, because I think ours are just about depleted.
All right, and there's been more request, conversation I had with Paul for the grants that we have available. There's been more requests for them lately in the last couple of years than there were collectively before. So it's impact of the economy, obviously, but people are, the good news is people are finding out more and more about them, and they're using them, so I couldn't agree more. Those are the types of things that we need to look at funding.
So if we could make it, broader, as Commissioner Henry said, to encompass more, that would be great. Another thing that I had on my list that has not already been brought up is addressing the nutrient numeric code that they're enforcing upon us, trying to enforce upon us, and I guess that may come under unfunded mandates, but I think that's the biggie that really could.
The loading. The nutrient loading.
Nutrient loading or whatever, anyway. I'm glad you got it. Because that could really break us. We've been doing real well, I think, with our budget. But that's something that could really break a lot of cities. So anything that we could do with lobbying for that.
Thank you.
Actually, Commissioner Rumsfeld, you just reminded me, there's also another piece out there that deals with emission standards that are completely unattainable. So I think it got sort of tabled for a while, but we probably want to keep an eye on that at least. And if it's out there, it needs to be opposed, because what it would do is it would prevent you from doing any roadway expansion until you got your emissions to a particular level, which cannot be done by any city in the country. So it would put an end to highway expansion or roadway expansion nationwide. So.
Thank you. Good comments and suggestions. I have one for you I'd like to bring up. This isn't under a legislative request or a federal request. I'm sort of interested in banning smoking in all of our public facilities, all of our ballparks, our band
Wow.
shells and things like that. And sort of wondered, if we could get sort of an idea if we're interested in discussing that even, or talking about it. Just thinking about, we're trying to get our kids to quit smoking, and in the parks they're attending and everything else, they got people there smoking, and they can still, there's nothing that, if you can't wait, on airplane flights, they, they
You can't.
wait. So just a thought. And I also had brought up about 3 meetings ago, I'd sure like to have a discussion about our moratorium on impact fees for a couple of years, because cities around us are doing it,
Yeah.
and we don't want to be the last man standing where we're not offering it and everybody else is, because it could make a huge difference. And I would like to see it in a moratorium for a couple of years, a time certain, and would have the opportunity to extend it or whatever. But some discussion about that in a future date, not necessarily today, but.
Mr.
yeah.
Mayor, on that front, I believe a few years ago, we had talked about this, and there was I think a water sewer bond issue that had a covenant where we pledged the impact fees for the repayment. And at that point, I think Bob was the city attorney. I was told that we could not waive those impact fees without violating the bond covenants. So, I mean, just as I would like to have that
Yeah.
discussion, but could we get that information
There's-
in advance as to whether or not we have any issues like that would perhaps
We-
be a hurdle to being able to move that forward?
We have actually started working on all those issues, and one of the things we do have to work around is if they are pledged revenues for debt service, then we wouldn't be able to pull them out. But we do have some that aren't pledged, as far as I know, and we're going to try to get all that back to you, though.
Good. Do you have any other?
I think I've heard everything that I have been aware of being presented today. We've got quite a list now from where we started, and I think if we can at least communicate our concern to all of the state and federal agencies, I think we'll be successful in just communicating it, because in all likelihood, the funding part of any request is going to be real difficult to achieve. Yeah, and I think we all understand that. But at the same time, we've got to get out and say we've got this need, and we need consideration if there is funding going to be available for projects. And I do, like you, Mayor, I do believe there's going to be some funds that's going to be available as a stimulus to get some of these projects going, create jobs, and put people back to work. And we want to be right there when that happens. We'll be sure we've got our ducks lined up.
It's interesting. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I heard a figure thrown out the other day, Hardy. This was just in conversation. I don't have this on authority that it's factual, but under that, with the other stimulus programs that went to the states, the monies that went to the state, that like 40% of it is still there and hasn't been distributed or hasn't been used. So
That's correct.
I don't know what the end result of that's going to be. Are they using it to pay their budgetary concerns, or I mean, I thought it was specific for what that money could be used
We
for.
could probably have a long discussion
Might
about
not be a popular discussion with
about
the
that,
state,
but there is no doubt that the dollar amounts that were publicized in the media and that Congress acted on, the totality of those funding programs, a good percentage of it never left Washington. It's some of it has yet to even have the rules and the procedures developed on how to spend it. So it wasn't the panacea that everybody thought it was going to be.
And some of it went to Tallahassee
Yes.
and never got beyond Tallahassee.
Right.
It's still in Tallahassee, and they actually used some of the funds to offset some of the state costs for operating government. So that money's gone. But there is still money up there, from what I understand.
I just had a quick question. what was the general feeling about the,
Yeah.
for the chamber and then also the gaming?
I was going to ask.
I just could, I just brought it up to kind of get a consensus and find out just because it was brought up and I wasn't sure what had happened.
Clarify for me, the chamber
Well,
issue.
are we agreeing to the?
I was going to
supporting
ask
the-
Jim to come up if he would promise to talk real quick. But on your other issue of gaming, we can open up a short
Okay,
little
our
discussion
direction on where we want them to go with that.
Okay.
Or if we want them to do anything with it.
And do you have a recommendation? We'll just start it with you, Commissioner.
I was, as I said before, is it something that we as a commissioner are interested in? Do we want it monitored? As Commissioner Woods and I seem to agree on, it'd be nice to understand what's happening. Did we want the lobbying? I just didn't know how this commission felt.
I, for one, just to jump in, I have a lot of confusion over what the state rules are. I mean, what was the agreement they signed with the Seminole Tribe last year that prevents gambling, period?
It's expiring. It's
I mean, so it's
expiring.
when that expires is when they want to go this route. How did, when they put slot machines in the pari-mutuel places down in South Florida, they had to have a local voter referendum, and we had to have a constitutional change to allow that referendum to even go forward. So what is it that this legislature can do that's in violation of the, I'm not quite sure I understand the landscape to really be able to take a position. I mean, they're obviously, the financial
wanna take a
benefits
position.
are enormous, the social risks are enormous, but I can't get to that point till I sort of understand what we can and can't do.
What I understand, Commissioner, is that the legislature action will be to allow it and to open it up and not restrict it to the reservations or to the Indian. So, and then, once that goes, regardless of how that goes, if your community, for instance, said, yeah, we would like to be involved in that, it would take a referendum, it would take a vote to allow that. That's my understanding.
Wasn't that constitutional change to only allow the referendum in Miami and Broward?
Yes.
No, they
David
picked
Broward?
I
out
thought
a
it-
few cities, I think they were speculating that would be interested or would be awarded, sort of like some of these other grants, they're available, it would be available statewide, but not open to everyone. You couldn't, there's a certain number that would be out there, but it would take legislative action to approve it statewide. And the casinos like the Hard Rock, I think that's the I don't know what tribe that is, but that is
Seminoles.
sunsetting.
I-
Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Since I'm in favor of it being restricted to the Seminoles, then I would not like to see us lobby for it.
Go ahead.
I too would like to see us lobby it for a different reason. But I definitely would like to see us monitor it and see what direction it goes in. And Pam, you made some good comments about the dog track. We would be in direct competition with somebody who's supported the city well over the years. But I too would like to monitor it, and I understand the social risk of casinos too. So I'm for monitoring.
Same.
Yeah, that was my concern. I mean, I would like to monitor it. I'm not in favor of lobbying for it.
Just keep us informed.
Monitor.
Yeah, I think it's something we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, we'd like to know. I think it'd be very informative and absolutely clarify what exactly is going on now. That would be a good first step. Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Jim, you got to get that Alabama tongue working, son.
30 seconds, Jim. No.
Just real quick, I'm Jim Cameron, Senior Vice President, Government Relations, Daytona Regional Chamber. You have before you a position paper from our chamber regarding internet sales tax. You have a situation where you have a number of out-of-state companies that are selling to our consumers, shipping products to our consumers. They do not have to collect and remit sales tax. Our local merchants have to collect sales tax. That puts them in Volusia County a 6.5 disadvantage. But at the same time, our local companies are the ones that are supporting local projects and local programs, Little League, Scout troops, PTAs, United Way, and we feel this puts them more so on an even keel. It's going to bring in, potentially, they're looking at $1.5 billion in new state revenue. This is not a tax increase. We see this as tax fairness. You have a number of groups out there now supporting this, Florida Chamber, Associated Industries, and Florida Tax Watch. They're joining Florida Retail Federation in support of this legislation, so I think you're going to see it move. We believe in the free market, but we also believe in a fair market. Thank you.
All right, comments?
Jim, are they paying taxes in the state, sales tax in the state that they have that they're shipping from, or are they just not paying any sales tax to anybody?
I've heard different stories on that, though. I mean, it's just whether they pay, the sales tax in
So this would be
in
wherever,
Michigan or
what
something.
state the
Yeah.
purchase takes place in, that's the
We
state
want
they
it
pay the
we
sales
want
tax.
that sales tax to come back here to Florida. I mean, I don't care about supporting a Michigan or an Indiana or Ohio type.
And other
Revenue.
states have enacted this, have put it in
20,
place.
I want to say 22 to 24 states so far that we know of.
Okay.
But it is catching on, and I have never seen this much support from the business community, from the major business groups up there, getting behind something like that this year.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody feel good about this, exploring this?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we'll add this to the list. Is there any other questions or comments from the commission about anything? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you.